Please do be seated. One of our twins, Jonathan, is going to come and read from God's word. And he's going to be reading about another twin. In fact, he's going to be reading about the chap I mentioned at the start, Jacob. Like the twins we've had here today, Jacob had a twin brother called Esau, and they were very different. Esau was older, he liked the outdoors, and he became a skillful hunter. Jacob was a bit quieter, preferring to be around home, and was much closer to his mother. But Jacob was also a deceiver. He stole his brother's birthright and later tricked his father into giving him, Jacob, the blessing that should have gone to Esau, the firstborn. So Esau was furious, and that's completely understandable, really, and he looked to take revenge over Jacob. So Jacob had to flee into the wilderness to escape his brother's threats, and that is where we're going to find him now, in the wilderness. Thanks, Jonathan.
So if anyone has a Bible, then it's page 30 from the red ones from the entrance. So Jacob's dream at Bethel, Genesis 28, reading verses 10 to 22. Jacob left Beersheba and set out for Haran. When he reached a certain place, he stopped for the night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones there, he put it under his head and lay down to sleep. He had a dream in which he saw a stairway resting on the earth with its top reaching to heaven, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. There above it stood the Lord, and he said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. When Jacob awoke from his sleep, he thought, surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it. He was afraid and said, how awesome is this place! There is none other than the house of God. This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. Early next morning, Jacob took the stone he had placed under his head and set it up as a pillar and poured oil on top of it. He called that place Bethel, though the city used to be called Luz. Then Jacob made a vow, saying, if God will be with me and will watch over me in this journey I am taking, and will give me food to eat and clothes to wear, so that I may return safely to my father's household, then the Lord will be my God, and this stone that I have set up as a pillar will be God's house. And of all that you give me, I will give you a tenth. This is the word of the Lord.
Thank you, Jonathan. Right, let's have a bit of a think about Jacob and what we can learn from his character. Well, we found him, haven't we, in the back of Beyond. He's in the wilderness. Has anyone ever visited a desert? Wilderness type thing? What's your overall recollections of that, Caroline? Never ending. Richard? Dry. Empty. Yeah, I remember being on a bus between Jerusalem and Jericho, and there was just wilderness, just sandy coloured soil stretching out for miles and miles. There's nothing there. Jacob was in a desolate wilderness. And yet in this deserted place, he also encounters God. Encounters God in a dream, we're told, And it is the start of his spiritual transformation. He's had a pretty ropey start to his life, Jacob the deceiver. Last term at Whitefriars, we were reflecting on how God communicates with us. And we thought about dreams and God speaking to us in dreams. God often uses dreams when he can't get our attention while we're awake. Jacob's dream was of angels going up and down a staircase between heaven and earth. And he recognized God's presence in that place. You see, like Jacob, wherever we are, we can find ourselves isolated, cut off, remote. But like Jacob, we can say, surely God is in this place. Surely God is in this place. You see, God is present everywhere. Wherever we find ourselves, God is always there. We might find ourselves cut off from people, emotionally desolate, cut off from friends and family, feeling unloved, abandoned, maybe alone in the world. Maybe we've suffered loss or the sting of bereavement. We've seen our dreams shattered perhaps, our hopes dashed. But even there, in the midst of that desperate place, God is present. Whatever stage of life, however old we are, whatever transition we may be going through, whatever circumstances we're facing, we remain in God's presence. I want you to remember this. God is present everywhere. There's nowhere that he isn't. God is present everywhere. There's nowhere that he isn't. Can I give you an example? 2 weeks ago, I was visiting Gloria in hospital. And Gloria knew that she's dying. She's actually at home now, receiving end-of-life care. But her faith is still shining through. She's comfortable, but on the morphine, so very, very sleepy. But I visited her in hospital. She was waiting for a scan. And it would have been completely understandable if Gloria was full of resentment and frustration and bitterness because of her circumstances. She'd been perfectly well and happy back in August, and now in January she's completely dependent on people for her every need. But she wasn't. Her faith was shining through. She knew where she's going. She knows where she is going. Her calm assurance, she told me, was a witness to those around her in the hospital and continues to be at home with those bringing palliative care. She was able to share her faith. And actually, although I'd gone to console her, she was more concerned about the church and me as I was for her. She knew God's presence right at that time of need. Because God is present everywhere. There's nowhere that he isn't. What about you? Do you ever feel kind of spiritually remote? Do you feel distant from God? Even if you do, be assured God is there. We might not be aware of it. We might not be attuned to God's presence with us. We might not even admit that God is there with us. But whatever we're facing, he's there. And the challenge for each of us is, can we find God in the ordinariness of everyday life? What we need, like Jacob, is to awaken ourselves to God's presence. Jacob admitted that he was unaware of God's presence. He said, surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it. Surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it. Many of us can be unaware of God's presence too. We live in society that's full of distractions. Our attention span is shortening. Our lives are too busy, crowded with appointments and distractions and interruptions. And all of those things can get in the way of us being attentive to God. Does that resonate with you? I wonder, why is it that we are so inattentive to God? I'm going to suggest a few reasons. There may be plenty more. Maybe quite simply, like Jacob, we just don't expect to encounter God in our daily lives. Maybe we think, I'll turn up in church on Sunday, I'll do my God bit, and then the rest of the week he can leave me alone. Well, I'm sorry, I've got news for you. God is present everywhere, every part of your daily life. Maybe another reason could be that we're just full of information overload in this modern society. We've got apps, we've got surfing the internet, we've got phone scrolling. We can go down that rabbit hole of online links, one video to the next. We can jump channels on our multi-channel TVs and maybe try and watch two things at once instead of concentrating on one thing. We might have the constant ping of messages arriving at our phones. All of these things can distract us from being attentive to God's presence with us. We can learn to hear God's voice by developing good habits and practices. We can dedicate time at the beginning of each day consciously to come into God's presence without the distractions of the day having started. Turn your phone off or don't switch it on. Talk to God about what's coming up in that day. At the end of the day, we can reflect back at all the things that have happened, all the people we've met, all the situations we've been in, all the conversations we've had, and notice consciously where God has been at work. And those things will help us just to develop that spiritual dimension and be more aware of God's presence. What about now? We can live in the present moment, being more aware of God's presence around us. We can tune in to what our senses are telling us. That might mean eating more slowly. Challenge for me. Savouring every mouthful, giving thanks to God for the taste. We can walk more slowly, or walk instead of driving if it's a short journey. We could be more aware of what we can see around us, what we can hear, acknowledging God's wonderful creation. I help out at an after-school club at Whitefriars, devised by a charity called Action for Happiness. And we give the children, this is Emma and myself, give the children ways and means of becoming more mindful of the present moment as a means of decreasing anxiety and increasing happiness. And I would say increasing awareness of God. So I need some volunteers. We're going to do one of those activities now. The volunteer simply has to eat a grape. Is that all right? Who'd like to come and volunteer? Okay, I've got 3 volunteers at the front. They came to the front first. So if you'd like to come up here, that would be great. Just have to come and eat a grape. It's all right. It's no trick. Come on, guys. Come on. That's it. Well done. Well done. Well done. Well done. Jack and Emily. Jack and Emily, would you like to come and eat a grape? Yeah? Well done. Well done. Come on, Hannah. You can eat a grape too. In fact, I've got lots of grapes. Anybody who wants to eat a grape, I'll give these guys a grape, and then Simon can come round. If you'd like to eat a grape too, just put your hand up. Okay, but what we're going to do is we're going to eat our grape very slowly. So the first thing you're going to do is hold it in your hand, not grip it tight, just hold it gently. Just get a sense of the feel of the grape. We'd like to take a grape. Don't eat it yet till I tell you. In fact, don't put it in your mouth till I tell you. There you go. So just hold it, feel it. It's smooth, isn't it? Don't eat it yet. Don't put it in your mouth yet, Jack. That's it. Just hold it. You might want to sniff it, smell it, see what it smells like. That's it. Simon will bring a grape round to anyone who'd like to have one. So we're just going to use a sense of touch before we have that activity of eating. Okay, have you smelt it? Does it smell of grape? It's not particularly, because the smell comes from the juice, doesn't it? And that's all contained within a relatively firm smell. Right, okay. Now, the next bit's quite difficult. Are you listening? Because if we put something in our mouth, normally we eat it, okay? But I just want you to roll it round in your mouth and not to bite into it until I tell you. So we're going to use our mouth to feel the shape, to feel the flavour, but not bite it, not crush it, not use our teeth at all. Okay, have you got that? Ready, steady? Anybody else who's got one? Just feel it, put it in your mouth, feel it in your mouth, that's fine, but no biting, no swallowing. Just, you can do that now. You can do that now, guys. That's it. Yeah, that's it, well done, yeah. So just roll it round in your mouth. Okay. Now the next thing is really difficult because in a moment I'm going to invite you to bite your grape but not chew it. So when you bite it, you release some of the grape juice in your mouth and that will completely change the experience. But I want you to sense the juice being released in your mouth and you get much more of the flavour in the juice. But I don't want you to chew it at this stage. So after 3, we'll do 1 bite to release some juice. You can crush it if you want, or you can bite it between your teeth at the front. After 3, Jack, are you ready? To bite but not chew. Okay? 1, 2, bite. Please don't chew it. That should release some of the grape juice. I can't talk and eat at the same time. I might do it in a minute. Thank you. Small, smooth, round, quite firm, fairly new grapes. But that juice coming into your mouth, I mean, you'd have eaten 6 grapes off the bat by now normally, wouldn't you? You know, pop them in one at a time. They're like little sweets, aren't they? But do you ever stop to savour the flavour? Okay, now, if you can manage this, you can chew your grape, crush it up, but try not to swallow the whole thing yet. So just chew it for a long time and release all those grape juices into your mouth. And they're going to mix with your saliva and start being broken down. And does Jack need another one? He's just showing you. Well done, Jack. You've done really well. So just chew, but don't swallow it, because I want all those flavour, and I want the skin to start being broken down. That's the hardest bit of a grape to break down. Okay? And if you chew something for a long time, actually, I've been told, because I don't chew very much, I usually pop things in and swallow them, and wonder why I'm eating my food too fast. But actually, if you eat slowly, it gives time for the signal between your brain and your stomach to catch up. So actually, you don't eat so much. So if you want to look at eating less, chew for longer before you swallow. Okay, you've done really well. Guys, you can now swallow whatever's left in your mouth, and that final part of eating happens. Thank you very much. Would you like to take a seat? Big round of applause for those who've helped. Thank you so much. They are nice, aren't they? That's brilliant. Here's something else we can do. Slow ourselves down. We can all be involved in this as well. We're going to be mindful, not about what God's created and the food he's given us, but mindful about God's presence. And so we're going to pray in a different way. We're going to pray by focusing on our breathing. And what I want you to do is place your feet on your floor, hand on your lap, and concentrate on your breathing. Slow it down. Breathe slowly and deliberately. And as you breathe in, think of the Spirit of God being imparted to you, filling your lungs, filling your presence with the Spirit of God. Receive the Spirit. And as you breathe out slowly, you're expressing your partnership with the Spirit, allowing him to work through you. As we breathe in, we receive. As we breathe out, we let go. Breathe in, receive. Breathe out, let go. And just by breathing prayerfully, without words, we remind ourselves of the miracle of creation, the gift of life that breath brings, as well as the indwelling of the Holy Spirit and the gift of new life that we have when we are filled with God's Spirit. Just a very short time, but you can do that any time. You want to just slow down, be aware of God's presence. Just breathe in and acknowledge God's presence. Breathe out and acknowledge your partnership with him. Great, thank you. Just a couple more minutes. The amazing thing in all this is that our amazing, our wonderful, our awesome Creator God actually is willing to make himself known intimately and personally to each of us. The gift of his Spirit that God has is always reaching out to us in love. And the question always is, are we reaching out in response? God spoke through Jacob through a dream, and that dream gained Jacob's attention, didn't he? Surely God is in this place, but it also made him realize a couple of other things. The distance between God in heaven and humans on earth is not great at all. God is not a distant God. And it's God who takes the initiative coming down from his heavenly home to communicate with us. He's not a remote God. He's personal. He's approachable. He longs to meet with us. So we have to believe that God speaks. God speaks to you. You have the capacity to hear and recognize his voice. He is a living God. God has always reached out with love and grace. There may be times we need a challenge or a rebuke, but it's given in love, never to condemn. It's Satan who brings us down to accuse us, to make us miserable. God always builds us up, encourages us, and motivates us to better things, to be the best we can be. So to close, I'd just like to encourage you to stay awake to God. Remember, there's no place that God isn't. So let's be increasingly aware of God in our daily lives. Practice seeing God in every situation, every conversation, every interaction you have. And then we'll get that sense of God being present with us all the time. Because when we practice being in God's presence more and more, we will encounter God more. And when we encounter God, God will transform us gradually, bit by bit, more into his likeness. We're all a work in progress. But our goal as disciples of Christ is to become like Christ. And it starts with attending to God's presence.